Welcome to the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, John Martin Keith. Celebrities, working class musicians, and people who work behind the scenes in all areas of the music industry will share their stories, encourage you, and give practical advice of ways you can make a living doing what you love in the music industry. This episode is brought to you by Edenbrook Productions. Edenbrook Productions is the company I founded to help musicians grow in their craft. Are you a songwriter, but maybe you've been told your songs aren't quite there yet? Or are your songs ready, but you don't feel stage ready? Or maybe music is your passion, but you feel imprisoned by your day job and you don't know what to do next to make your dream a reality? Well, Edenbrook Productions is here to help. We offer consulting services via phone call, Skype, and FaceTime. And for the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast listeners, we're offering an introductory 1-hour consultation special. Click on the link in the show notes to contact me, and let's get you making a living in the music industry. Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. My good friend Mark Irwin is a hit country music songwriter in Nashville. He co-wrote Alan Jackson's Here in the Real World, which was nominated twice for Song of the Year by the Country Music Association. Mark also wrote the hit song Highway Don't Care for Tim McGraw and Taylor Swift, among many others. Mark has been signed to multiple publishing deals throughout his songwriting career. I'm excited for you to listen to our conversation about songwriting and publishing today. All right, hey, I'm here with my friend Mark Irwin. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. We haven't seen each other in a while.
It has been a while.
It's been a couple of years, I think,
Yes.
at least. But
Yeah.
you and I met actually delivering pizzas in Brentwood, and that was a fun time in life. You know, I was out on the road touring and part-time, and then when I was coming home from being on the road, you know, I had a job to go to at the time that I needed, and I met you there and found out that you were a songwriter, and anytime I find that out, my ears instantly perk up because I love writing songs and always looking for people to write with. And so that was a cool experience, just getting to know you that way, and then found out, I was like, wait, this dude's a big-time songwriter, and I know your songs on the radio. And so tell me a little bit about, for our listeners, where you're from and how you got into music to begin with.
Okay. I'm originally from New York. I grew up in the Bronx, but when people ask me how somebody from the Bronx got into country music, I usually say, well, it was the South Bronx.
Nice.
But I've been in Nashville since 1987, and I was lucky when I first came to town. Like, I think within my third day in town, I got a job at the Bluebird Cafe.
Nice. Wow.
I was working as a busboy, barback, and that led to bartending. So I was there about 5 or 6 years altogether, and that was just a great outlet for me to meet people in the music business. And
Sure.
I've made some relationships, co-writer relationships that I'm still working with today.
Yeah.
All these years later.
That's awesome. And what got you into country music? Like, from being from South Bronx, New York, what was that drew you to country music to begin with?
Of course I was into music like any other teenager in the late 70s and early 80s, and the music I liked was really guitar driven, and the stuff that was getting played and popular in those days started getting a little bit more keyboard oriented, a little bit more synthesizer and pop stuff. And through like my love of certain artists, I got into the Southern California sound, Jackson Browne and the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt, and through Linda Ronstadt I saw the name Emmylou Harris, so I bought one of her records.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with it. And then I looked at, back then you had albums that you could look at the liner notes.
Yeah, of course.
So I looked up the players and some of the songwriters, and it just was like a rabbit hole I fell down. And once I heard, it led me to a Merle Haggard record. That was it. Once I heard a steel guitar and Merle Haggard's voice and his writing was just amazing. That was it. There was no turning back.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
And as I was, I used to play at open mics down in Greenwich Village, and they were telling me my stuff was really folky, which was their term, I guess, for country.
Sure.
So I just decided, I knew the business was here. I knew the songwriting business and the recording business was here. So I just packed up the truck and moved to Nashville.
Awesome. How long have you been writing songs?
Once I started learning the guitar, I felt like I was always kind of making things up. I would learn songs. Like, I was really good at picking up chord changes. So I was started throwing in my own words to like melodies of songs that I knew. And then I realized you can get arrested for that,
Right.
or sued. So, I started writing my own. But really, since I started playing the guitar, I wanted to do my own stuff.
How long have you been playing?
Since I was a teenager, since I was probably 15, 16 years old.
Okay.
You'd think I'd be better by now, but
No, you're actually a pretty good, good player.
Thank
So, I remember because you and I have written a few songs together over the years, and I remember sitting down the first time, and you threw out some lick, and I was like, "Oh, this dude knows what he's doing. That's really good."
And truthfully, over the last few years, here in Nashville and co-writing Pro Tool rigs and other, computer studio stuff has gotten to be really popular.
Yeah.
And I just had no interest in learning about that stuff, so I kind of focused more on the guitar and felt like I had more contributions to make that way. Well, getting better at playing, maybe coming up with some riffs that became signature riffs, and so yeah, I just guitar nerd.
I get it. I am too, so I understand that completely.
Yeah.
So once you got to Nashville, did you have any contacts with people before you got to town?
No,
or was it just you just show up and here we go?
Yeah, actually, pretty much. I came to town. By the time I got to town, it was a Saturday, and I got a motel on Broadway. I got a motel room in a place on Broadway that's no longer there, and I got the Sunday paper the next day, and there were ads back then for roommates wanted, and I don't know if I'd recommend doing that, rooming with a stranger these days, but I was dumb. I met a guy, and I was lucky, and he was a great guy, and we got an apartment together, and the one name that I had, the one organization that I knew of was the Nashville Songwriters Association.
Right. Yep.
So I went there as soon as I could, and they told me about a couple of publishing companies, and they told me about the Bluebird Cafe, and that's how I ended up there.
Okay.
And really, my first night there, I remember clearly a songwriter named Fred Knobloch was playing, and I was blown away. I started talking to this lady who turned out to be the manager, and she said, "Come back tomorrow," and that's how I got the job so quick.
Okay. And so, what led you down the trail of writing music when you get to town? What was your first contact as a songwriter to make that first connection to kind of get your foot in the door here?
Well, excuse me, at the Bluebird, I was lucky enough to be working in an industry kind of hang with where most 90% of the people there were songwriters.
Right.
And I became friendly with a couple others, and I met this one guy. His name was Joe Collins. We became quick buddies, and he turned out to be my first co-writer.
Okay.
And actually the first guy I got a song recorded with.
Okay.
And just talking to other people, networking,
Yeah.
I learned about different publishers in town who were looking to hear some new songwriters, and I got some names. And I, when I wasn't working, called up some places, and I was lucky enough to get some appointments. And and it took a while, but it took a lot of appointments and a while of just really focusing on writing every day to build up that muscle, as I say,
Yeah.
But networking is a big help. Getting to meet some people and going to writer shows in town and meeting other people who are doing what you're doing.
Right.
There's definitely, I don't know how it is in Hollywood and with the acting world, which some people kind of see similarities.
Right.
But here, people are really open to sharing. Hey, so and so is looking for a song, or so and so is looking for a writer, and so just by networking and meeting people,
Yeah.
you find out about a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, just building friendships with people
Yes,
and relationships.
It's definitely a relationship-driven business.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time. People are probably getting sick of me saying that all the time on this show, but it's true.
Well, and I could tell you some great writers that I've known over the years who have blown opportunities because whether it was ego or just being arrogant, but they've blown relationships and along with that opportunities, and they're not around anymore.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit because you were saying when you're making those connections and writing with your first co-writer, but then you started reaching out to publishing companies, trying to get in the door with some of these people. Walk me through the process a little bit of what it takes. What's the process of connecting with a publisher to begin with? Like when you reach out to somebody the first time, like what was your steps to do that, and how would you reach out to them? For somebody's listening and thinking,
Sure.
I want to do this, how do I do that? And it may be different nowadays to some degree. I'm not exactly sure.
Well,
Back then, but
some people would say you need first off, you need to take like your best 3 or 4 songs and do elaborate demos. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you could take your best couple of songs and do like a really good, clean guitar vocal and just let the song, sell itself. Once you have that, I called places on my own. I said, like I knew of this company called 1010 Music. So they were a new company. I knew they were listening to outside songs through just folks letting me know that.
Right.
I called up and I forget who it was, but I said, hey, so-and-so recommended I give you guys a shout. And they made an appointment and brought in some songs and we listened. And,
Okay.
It didn't happen overnight, but through 1010 Music, they were also doing management. And through them, I met Alan Jackson.
Okay.
And they hooked us up to write. And then, that turned into Here in the Real World. While we were writing. My first song is a hit, yeah.
That's awesome.
And his as well.
Yeah.
But it was, they were doing publishing and they were doing management, so they hooked us up. And it's still, right now, looking back, it feels like it happened overnight, but it took a while.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, few things happen overnight. And
Yeah.
for most people, a lot of people don't realize the overnight success. For us that are on the side of trying to actually get the success of sorts, that's usually a multi-year
So I was
situation.
really lucky that, they were starting to like the songs I was bringing in, but they were a new upstart company, so they didn't have the money to like say, hey, come write for us full time, we'll pay you a draw,
Oh, yeah.
So I was still working at the Bluebird at night and still meeting people and getting to hear people. And I'll tell you, being there every night and hearing some people play, I knew I had my work cut out for me because, there were a lot of ones that you knew weren't going anywhere, but every once in a while you heard somebody. I was there the night Tony Arata played The Dance for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So, it was an inspiration to like get better. Because I'll admit, when I first started working at the Bluebird, I was young and I was single and we kind of partied a lot and we stayed out till late at night and I slept a good portion of the day and just got up and went back to work. And after a while, I realized this is not why I came to town. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of, disciplined myself to making sure I was writing every day.
That's good. Yeah. So your first hit is Here in the Real World with Alan Jackson. What, when you found out that song was going to become a number one, what was your first reaction to that?
Well, first off, that song at first was recorded by somebody else.
Oh, really?
An artist named Tony Perez.
Okay.
He was on Warner Brothers. It never came out. His album never came out. I don't know exactly what happened, but that happens occasionally. So the song was still available. Alan, subsequently got a record deal on Arista Records. He cut an album. He didn't cut Here in the Real World, and the album was delivered to the label. And they said, this is good, but I think we still need one song, one identifying kind of song. And so the president of the company, I think his name was Tim Dubois, he asked, let me hear other songs that you have. And one of them was Here in the Real World, and he just said, man, this one. Mm. And Alan was a little bit afraid of it in the beginning because he thought it might be a little bit too rangy for him to sing.
Okay.
But they went in and cut it. Alan put out a first single called Blue Blooded Woman that didn't do that well. And then he put out Here in the Real World, and the skies open and the angels sang.
Yeah.
But I just think besides the song, I think it was a good time for a traditional song like that, an artist like that. This was like right after Randy Travis kind of turned the tides, and you had people like Clint Black were out there doing it, and Alan, and then right after I think Garth Brooks hit.
Yeah.
But so the feeling of, I knew the song was out. I tell this story because I was still tending bar when the song was out and climbing the charts. And people who were playing the Bluebird, they used to announce it, from the stage or in the round. They would, because it was an industry place, they used to like to point out that, our bartender this evening has a number 15 song, the number 10 song. And I noticed that people were coming up and congratulating me and ordering their drinks, but they stopped tipping me.
Oh.
They thought I was making a fortune.
Oh, goodness.
So I had to ask them to stop announcing it because I was going broke having a hit song.
That's awesome.
But anyway, it was doing well. I knew it was doing well. And I was at a friend's house, and this was before we all had cell phones. And out of the blue, I got a phone call at a friend's house, which was really unusual, and they gave me the phone, and it was Alan.
Okay.
And he said, I heard, I just wanted to say tomorrow we're going to have the number one song. And he was really sweet, and he said, man, thank you for writing this with me. Thank you for being part of this. I'm so excited. And so he he had to track me down. He had to, like, I guess somebody knew where I was,
Yeah.
and he made a series of phone calls to find me.
That's cool.
But, yeah, the rest of that night was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Very belated.
Well, no,
Congratulations.
The song still means the world to me.
Yeah, and it's still doing great. I mean,
Yeah.
every time it comes out on some compilation or whatever it is.
And it's been recorded a few other times. George Jones recorded it on an album he did called Hits I've Missed and One I Didn't, which was a real honor. And Glenn Campbell recorded it.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had Alan's publisher at the time was a company called Making Music, and Glenn Campbell was one of the primary owners of the company. So he owned a piece of it, and he did an album when he used to play out in Branson, live from Branson. So he played it. He did great. And I remember telling my mom, who still lived up in New York, and she goes, finally, somebody I heard of.
Right.
When I told her Glenn Campbell recorded it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So over the years, you've written for different publishers.
Yes.
So once you left that first one and moved on to the next one.
From there, I went to EMI.
Okay. So can you explain for listeners, first of all, what's the purpose of moving from one publisher to a different one? Like, why would somebody do that just to begin with?
The first publisher, 1010, like I said, they were a young upstart company. And even though we had this hit, and on the management side of the company, Alan was starting to do well, they weren't that fluid. They didn't have the kind of money that was needed to, like, support a writer, say, hey, stop working, we'll pay you. It's a draw, it's like with a car salesman. They give you money and then they recoup it if you have hits,
Right. Yeah.
But they didn't have the money to get me out of the bartending business. So after a while, I started taking meetings at other places, and having that song, just be a hit, that really helped. That really opened up a lot of doors for me.
Yeah.
But I also had other songs too. So I went to a couple of companies, and EMI was being run then by a woman named Celia Froelich, and Robin Palmer was the plugger, and we just all kind of like fell in love with each other. And they signed me to a deal which afforded me to be able to give up bartending and just write every day, and also be able to pay my rent and my grocery bill.
Yeah.
So that was a great relationship for a while, because back in those days, country was doing great. A lot of people were recording outside songs, and even if they weren't hit singles, the records were selling so well, you can make a good living just on getting album cuts.
Yeah, of course.
So it was a good time. But I think I was there like 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
And things changed. Celia left, and new people came in, and I didn't have a cut in a year or two, maybe. So it's still a business. So, I mean, I would have stayed, but they decided to drop me, after not having, and I understand that,
Sure.
So, and I was lucky enough after they dropped me to be able to get another deal somewhere else, somebody who heard what I was doing, and even though I hadn't had a cut or a hit lately, they still believed in me as a writer and what I was doing to take a chance and sign me. So usually when you're at a company and you have a decent relationship with your publisher, you're going to stay as long as you can, because it's kind of hard to walk away from a catalog that you have there, catalog of songs. So it's usually when somebody leaves a publisher, it's usually because they got dropped.
Okay.
I would say.
So how long do you typically are you contracted for if you're at a publisher? If they sign you up.
A basic contract, and everything can be negotiated.
Sure,
everything's different, but a basic contract, I usually ask for the first option, the first period, to be 18 months at least, because a year can go by really quickly.
Right.
So my first, my first option was 18 months, and then the company has the option of whether picking you up for another year or dropping you. So usually after that, it's every year.
Okay.
They look at the what they're paying you and any money coming in, and decide if they want to keep going. So a contract could be like your first option, first year plus, like, say, 2 or 3 options.
Okay.
That it's usually in the publisher's. The publisher usually has the power.
Okay. And how many songs do you typically have to write within a year to be able to? They
used to talk about quotas. I don't know if they talk about it so much these days, but it used to be either like, back then it was a lot of 2-way co-writes, and these days it's a lot of 3-way co-writes.
Okay.
So it's usually 12 songs, 100%, or 24 co-writes. But if you're writing every day, if you're doing it every day, you're going to write more than that.
Of course.
You might not demo them all, but you're going to write more than that.
Yeah.
If you're really doing it.
Yeah. Is there an average amount of songs that need to get placed on an album with somebody during that year or during that?
Well, these days, like I said, just getting an album cut doesn't necessarily generate that much income.
Mm-hmm.
So, singles are where it's at in country. You still, but there's also there are movies and TV shows and other streams of income from songs. Here at Sony, they have a sync department, which it's SYNC.
Right.
They try to synchronize songs to be used in movies or TV commercials or TV shows,
Right.
and when they're used there, they negotiate a price and a contract for those, and so you have that money coming in as well.
Yeah.
So, but if you have nothing going, usually a company will at least give you 2 years, 2.5 years to get something going.
Mm-hmm.
After that, if you have really had any luck, they might reevaluate it, and
Sure.
they might decide it's not worth it to them financially
Yeah.
to keep going on.
So nowadays, because the business has changed so much since the 80s and 90s, at sort of the heyday of music and country music, but nowadays, with the digital revolution and Spotify and all these things, and money is just not nearly what it used to be.
Yeah. Well, these days there's a lot more writing with artists.
Okay.
Because the business has changed to the point where it's a lot harder to get outside songs cut, meaning a song that the artist hasn't written. These days, it seems like when an artist gets signed to, they usually have their own group of friends, or posse, as I call it, of guys that they're writing with before they even had their deal, and they usually kind of come in and they continue doing that. And a lot of those writers who are friends say, like here, there's an artist named Mitchell Tenpenny. He just got signed to Sony. He had a hit last year with a song called Drunk Me. And I know, for example, some of the folks that he was writing with before he had a deal, he's still writing with them. So those guys are getting publishing deals because they're aligned with an artist,
Right.
and chances are they're gonna be all over his record and hopefully have a single or two.
Right.
People are getting signed that way as opposed to just coming in off the street, just being a great songwriter. Those writers get signed too, but not, I don't think, as much as young green writers writing with potential artists.
Yeah. So, who are some of the artists that you've written for and have hits with?
Well, I was lucky enough because my career still was at a time where artists were smart enough to just to find great songs.
Right.
So I was lucky enough. I did write. Alan Jackson really is a songwriter.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we wrote. We had the day we wrote here in the Real World. We also wrote another song called "Till I Was Loved by You" that was recorded by Shelley Wright. It was her first single when
Okay.
she.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was great. But I've had songs recorded by Blake Shelton, by Tim McGraw, George Jones, like I said. Who else? I mean,
You got a Garth cut?
I got a Garth cut.
Remember
yes.
that?
The Garth one was funny because they'll put a song on hold, asking you, which means they're really seriously considering it. So that means asking you not to pitch it to someone else in the meantime.
Right.
So he put that song on hold, and he had it on hold for a year. And when the album he was working on came out, we went to the album release party, my co-writer and me, and we saw the album, and our song wasn't on there.
Oh, goodness.
Which happens,
Yeah.
So a few days later, though, Garth, he sent us both a check for sorry for taking the song out of commission for so long. He was really sweet.
That's really nice.
And then years later, he did an album for Walmart, and it was like a 4 CD thing, and one of the CDs was songs. It's called the Lost Sessions, and there were songs that he cut that never came out, and our song was on there.
Yep.
So it went on to sell 2 or 3 million copies.
Yep.
Anyway.
I remember that because we were
That's
working.
when we were working.
We were delivering pizzas together, and you told me, it's like, hey man, I got this Garth thing that's coming out, and gave me a copy of it, and I was just like, dude, that's so awesome, And I think that's probably what allowed you to not have to come back and do pizzas again.
Well, the pizza thing, I will say that I left one publisher. That company was kind of falling apart, and I had another year on my contract, so I asked out of that contract, and I did get another deal at a new company that was called Red Vinyl, but they weren't opening their doors for 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So I just for some,
have to have something.
some income, they did the delivery. And let me tell you something, Brentwood's a good place to deliver pizza.
It sure was. It was at the time, at least. But
yes.
that's awesome. And you also had you said you did a Tim McGraw, the Highway, Don't Care?
Yeah.
That's one that you co-wrote?
I co-wrote that with my friend Josh Keir and these brothers who are like really hot writers called the Warren Brothers, Brad and Brett Warren.
Yeah.
So the four of us wrote that. And, when we wrote it, we kind of put it in this section envisioning for a female vocal, like it's supposed to be like a soft voice coming through the radio. And we thought that Faith Hill would sing it. Tim loved the song, but Faith didn't want to do it, and we thought that was the end of it. And then Tim had the brilliant idea of asking Taylor, and she said yes, and it was awesome.
That's cool.
But so Tim they cut a track, they cut his vocal, they sent it to Keith Urban, and he did a guitar part. And then I think it took about 6 or 7 months before Taylor put her voice on it.
Okay.
So that was murder, waiting all that time.
Yeah, but it was a good outcome though.
Yes, and I even my daughter was about 10. I tell this story anytime I play it because it's true. My daughter was about 10 or 11 years old, and I knew she listened to Taylor Swift. What 10 or 11-year-old girl back then didn't.
Right.
But I didn't tell her about it until it was a done deal, because things can change overnight. So when I finally heard that Taylor did her part, I raced home, and I knocked on her bedroom door, and I said, "Rosie, you're never going to believe this, but Taylor Swift sang on one of my songs today." And she just kind of looked at me with this weird look on her face. She said, "Daddy, you couldn't get Demi Lovato?" She really said that.
Oh my goodness!
Like, oh my God!
But this huge moment is like deflating.
That was the end of me trying to impress my kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was like the stars really aligned for that. Tim liked the song so much that he went out on a limb to ask Taylor about it. And as big a star, Tim McGraw was one of my favorites all along because I always thought his songs were just amazing. He just had a great ear for great songs over the years. Lived Like You Were Dying.
Right.
So many great songs. So to be part of his catalog is really a thrill. And he's recorded about 4 other songs of mine, but that was the biggest one.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, as a songwriter, what do you tell new songwriters that are coming into town that you might meet with? And I know you're working with Menon Ward.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So she and I met. She's a fairly new artist.
I just saw her yesterday,
Yeah. So we actually played a show together a few months ago and met and found out that she knew you and that you were working with her. And I thought, man, that's so cool. I was like, I know Mark. We've known each other for years and have written together. She's moving into town and becoming an artist and a songwriter. And so just for artists or songwriters that are coming in trying to kind of get their feet wet, what advice do you give them? Again, because it's a different world than it was back in the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
So like for nowadays.
It's hard to say. I mean, coming into town cold is a tough, hill to climb, but there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of people here willing to help steer you. Again, the Nashville Songwriters Association is a great organization for new artists in town. They set up like meetings to play your songs for publishers or ASCAP. I joined ASCAP. That's the
Performing Rights
Organization. Thank you. And like through the way I met Marin actually was they asked me to do a workshop. As a veteran songwriter with a couple of young writers that they, because they want to help writers blossom and get noticed. So they took about 10 writers that they really felt confident, and they hooked them up with me, and we had like I don't know how many classes we had, like 3 or 4. And Manon was in that, and we talked about writing. We talked the experience of the writing room, networking, meetings with publishers, always don't do anything, don't have a meeting and present yourself until you have what you think is your best. You only have one chance to make a first impression.
Right.
And Madden played some stuff and some of the others, and I think they were really good. And so I let her, I gave her a number of a few publishers in town, and I said, by all means, tell them I, mentioned for you to call. Not that my name is gonna, get you a deal, but it might get you.
Helps.
I think it really helps if you have somebody, recommend you. Call her. I was lucky years ago. Somebody at ASCAP made a couple of calls to publishers on my behalf, and got me a publishing deal through that, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of ways to find champions in this town. Again, it's about relationships.
Yep.
NSAI is a great way to they have a way of like introducing you to other writers or publishers or producers, and you know, sometimes you just click with somebody.
Yeah.
Taking meetings with ASCAP or BMI or CSAC helps, and going to writer shows, and you know,
Like write arounds?
yeah,
Yeah.
and get networking. There are plenty in town that are free to go to, and you know, try to get up there and play as much as possible. And if you see somebody doing something that really gets to you for whatever reason, you know, try to stir up a relationship. Ask about writing or something like that. You know, because.
And that's how you and I got to write together. I mean, we were working doing pizzas together, but you know, and found out that you write.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey man, I'm a writer, and you know, and so I just had to ask the question.
Right.
All you can do is say no, but
exactly,
you never know.
No one's gonna knock on your door and say, hey, you want to be a hit songwriter? You got to go out and make it happen. You got to be proactive.
Yeah.
And Nashville still, the loop has tightened from when I got here. You know.
Sure.
But there's still opportunities, and everybody wants to discover the next great songwriter.
Yeah.
You know, all the publishers in town, they want to, you know, you're going to get at least one shot, you know, and hopefully, like I said, you'll be able to present your best self.
Right. So I want to back up just a minute, back to the publishers, different publishing companies.
Yeah.
So when you leave a publishing company and you've got a catalog of music with them, and then you go to somebody else and you've created a catalog with them, and then you've left them and now you're at somewhere else. What happens to those songs? Are they still getting pitched?
Hopefully, you know, or I still have the option of pitching them. And sometimes when you do well and you make it, you know, you start with a new publisher, you want to get co-pub, you know, so you own some of your publishing, and you have the option when you're leaving someplace or even before you leave that you can sell off your catalog, your share of the catalog. You know, when you've had a couple of hits and you own 50% of the publishing, there are other companies who will want to buy, you know, pay you, you know, good money. And that's the way a lot of songwriters, besides royalties and residuals, they make a good portion of money from selling catalogs that they own some of the publishing on.
So can you explain that a little bit more, like a little more detail on
what
does that mean when you're
starting out? You know, starting out when you're young, you're not going to get co-pub. So if you sign a publishing deal with a publisher, they're going to pay you a draw, like a monthly draw to live on.
Okay.
But you know, and the way you get paid, if you have a single, say, you get paid from ASCAP for performances, and you get paid through mechanicals for sales. Right. Usually a publisher will recoup that draw through the sales mechanical, and they'll leave your ASCAP, your PROs alone. But at that point, they own 100% of your publishing, and you own 100% of your writer share.
Right.
So you split it.
Right.
So it's 50-50. And if you co-write, then they own 100% of your publishing, which is 50% of the song.
Right.
But when you start doing well and you start having hits, and you renegotiate with or either with that publisher or sign a new deal, you have the clout to ask for co-publishing, co-ownership of your publishing, not just your writer share, but co-owner of your publishing too. So if you have 50% co-pub on a song, co-publishing on a song, so say you wrote a song with somebody else, so the publishing is cut in half. Now you and your publisher split that 50%,
right?
You know, of your side of the song,
right?
So you'll own 25%. But if it's a hit song, we're talking about good money, you know. So, and if you've done that for a couple of years, and if you had a couple of hits in that catalog, and you own 50% of the publishing of it, that has a real value. And at some point, you know, another publisher will want to purchase it from you. And we're talking, I mean, I know, you know, with hits in there, you know, we're talking hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, you know, to pay for catalogs.
So another publisher, let's say you're moving from one publisher.
You don't even have to leave. You could, you know, if your option is coming out, you could sell that catalog and start a new catalog with the same publisher. You know, you could sell your share, even if you're still there.
Okay.
But for me, you know, I've had hit and miss over the years. You know, I'm definitely an early. I tell people this. It was 22 years between my first number one and my second number one.
Really?
And then it was 5 weeks between my second and my third.
Okay.
That's better.
Yeah.
But so I've had different publishing deals, and each of them might have had like one hit, and then whatever, you know, a cold spell, A couple of years might pass and I didn't have anything else, so I would leave there. So just having one hit in like wasn't enough clout necessarily to get co-pub at my next deal. So I have a lot of catalogs in town with different publishers that they own 100% of the publishing. So it's in their best interest to keep pitching those songs and try to get them recorded.
Yeah.
But often back catalogs, as they're called, they kind of, I don't want to say they get forgotten, but you know, when a publisher signs a new writer, they're really trying hard, focused on that writer, and it's hard to kind of look back, even if they're sitting on, you know, a great catalog of songs.
Yeah.
I left one company only because there was some weirdness in the company, and for like a year and a half, there was no plugger. There was nobody pitching the songs, and I was writing, and I think, you know, it was one of my best catalogs, and I think some of those songs just like never got a chance. So something else you can do is hire an independent song plugger and give them a CD or a playlist or whatever of your songs and make a deal with them. Hey, if you get this song cut, I'll pay you this much amount, you know, and they can take that.
You can take a percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of your share, whether it's the writer share or your royalties, or you just want to pay them out of pocket, whatever deal you make with them. But there are independent song pluggers who you can hire to pitch songs that you feel aren't getting out there enough.
So how would you recommend working with a song plugger if you're having to do it directly? Do you prefer to give them a percentage of something or to pay them directly? Like, what would you do if it was you're the person in that position?
I would rather give them a percentage. If I owned some of the publishing, like say if I own 50% of the publishing, say you know, give you 10% of the publishing and a bonus, cash bonus for every song you get cut.
Okay.
Some might ask for, like with being a writer, they might ask for a draw, like some upfront money to give them incentive to go out there and pitch. So they might ask for like $500 a month or something like that. You know, each one's different, I think. I've never had to hire one.
Yeah.
So each one is different. But I think you could always negotiate the deal with somebody, especially if they really believe in your songs.
Yeah. I mean, that's good information for listeners to know that
even if you're an independent writer,
right?
Even if you're an independent, you don't have a publishing deal. If you own all your publishing, you can hire somebody just to pitch it and work out a deal with them.
Yeah.
But you do need to register. If you're going to try to get songs recorded in the mainstream, you do need to try to, you know, join one of the PROs, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, because they're the ones that are going to be collecting the money for you.
Right.
If you have a single out there.
Yep. Or anything, or TV, or anything like that, or even when you're performing live.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you send in your set list, and then you get paid, and a lot of people don't take advantage.
Yeah, I know. I didn't take advantage of it either, but a few years back I had a song that Jimmy Buffett actually recorded.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was the name of the tour, and he was playing it every night. And like a couple of years later, I went back to ASCAP, and we did talk about that, and I did get a check for what do you call it, a retroactive check for some of that stuff for a live performance.
Nice. I'll be honest, I need to actually do better about that, because you don't think about it, you know, and you get busy, and but when you're playing out all the time, like as an artist, you know, I'm out playing all the time, and I need.
If someone, I don't know, are you playing out where other people are making money, like they're selling tickets and you're getting to play, and they're making money from you playing?
Because sometimes, not all the time.
If somebody's making money off of you playing, that's when you deserve to get your performance royalties.
Yeah.
If nobody's making any money on the deal, then I mean, you know, it's all, you know, just good faith stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now you are signed with Sony ATV. That's where we're hanging out today, is in their writing room. And so how long have you been signed with Sony?
I've been here now 18 months. I just started I'm in the first month of my second option. They picked up my option to at least for another year, thank God. And they were really great. I came here a year and a half ago. I left a company that was just really disappointing. And I, you know, came here, and, you know, they knew my track record. They knew I knew how to navigate the waters of meeting people and writing with people. And, you know, I definitely fall into the veteran songwriter category, which is good and bad. And they, you know, they liked what they heard, and they liked me, and they, you know, definitely took a chance. And so through this year and a half, these days it's pretty hard to get an outside song cut. There are a few writers still doing it, but for the most part, most of the stuff you're hearing on country radio, the artist or the producer is connected to the song in some way. It's just the way it's happened. I mean, it was happening like that in L.A. and New York for years, and Nashville's finally catching on to that. So Sony has the clout enough to hook me up with a lot of young artists who are either signed to labels or they believe it will be signed to labels, and trying to develop those relationships. And you don't click with everybody, but there's a couple who I've come to feel now not only are good writing partners and they're great singers, but I consider them friends, because you can't help but be in a room with somebody writing songs and spilling your guts, or a few times, and not like developing a relationship, more than just professional.
Sure.
So through Sony, where other company might not have had the ability to hook me up with a few of these young artists, that was a real benefit being here.
Okay, and so that's an advantage compared to being with some of the smaller, more boutique
who might not have access to those
publishers.
artists to get me in the room with those artists in the first place.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Awesome.
because a couple of those artists, that I've built up a relationship with, they write here as well.
Okay.
Sony has the, being a worldwide organization, they have not just writers, but artist writers as well.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any last bit advice for any writers that are looking to make a living in this industry?
Yeah. Don't get discouraged and write as much as you can, because I think the more you write, the better you get at it. So if you have time, I know a lot of people have to work, to pay the bills, but if you can find, even if you're not doing it every day, like find an hour a day, half hour to even if it's just come up with a couple of lines, I say write as much as possible, because you're only going to get better at it. I'd say wait until you really feel like you have something special before you take a meeting, especially with a publisher, because like I said, you only have one chance. If you come back, if you have your first meeting and you didn't impress them, you didn't blow them away, they might not want to take a second meeting. So I think you want to, when you really feel you have something good, I'd say wait until that moment before you try to get into a publisher. And don't just bring them one song. Anybody can get lucky writing one song. You might even get lucky writing two songs that turn into hits. But if you can write 4 or 5, then you're probably a writer.
Yeah, sure.
And I'd say too, for someone just starting out, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on elaborate demos. If you're just sitting there writing a song on a piano or on a guitar, and you can, perform the song like that, a clean guitar vocal or piano vocal, I think is enough.
Okay.
If you're writing real pop stuff that has more to do with the track and the feel, that's something else. But that's not what I do, so I'm not.
Right.
I don't
Country's
know
a little
how
different.
to advise on that
Sure.
so much. And I think, listen and try to meet as many people who are writing, and try to, inspiration comes from being impressed with somebody else's work. I couldn't wait when I worked at the Bluebird and there was a good show that night. I couldn't wait to get home and pick up my guitar and try to write. I was just that, inspired.
Yeah.
So inspiration is important.
Yeah. Let me ask you real quick. If you're doing a demo, or even if an artist has put out, an indie album and they're wanting to pitch to a publisher, for their songs to be recorded by somebody else, how important is the person singing, the vocal quality? Because it's all about the song. We can always say it's all about the song, and
you wanted somebody who's gonna sell the song,
right?
And I don't sing.
Do they have to be Carrie Underwood?
They don't have to be Carrie Underwood, but they got to be good and got to, and sound like the genre. I don't sing my own demos. So if I've written a song, if I'm demoing a song that I didn't write with an artist, I just wrote with another writer, and neither of us sing, we try to find somebody who has the same kind of quality as some of the singers who are out on the radio today, because those are the people we're going to be pitching it to.
Yeah.
And they want to hear, or the producers or the A&R people at their label want to hear as much as they can, see, will this work on radio?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you don't sing very well, but some people who think they don't sing very well are real stylists.
Right.
Look at
there's a
Christopherson or
niche.
somebody like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. And these days, I think people are open to finding something unique.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that being said, as long as the melody and the lyric can be heard, I think that's the most important part. Because if a publisher likes a song, they can always shell out the money to do it.
Have somebody else do it.
Yeah.
Cool. Man, thank you so much for your
Sure.
time.
Thank you.
This is awesome getting to reconnect with you.
Yeah,
and,
you too.
And just learn more about you and your story and be able to share your expertise with.
I would say another advice is don't be afraid to ask people what if they want to write, or if you can come in and play them songs, because sometimes we're a little bit shy or a little bit nervous, but if you want to get things out in this world, you got to ask for them.
Right.
No one's just 90% of the time, no one's just gonna give it to you.
Yeah.
You got to ask.
Yeah.
So don't be shy about that. Make your presence known.
Yeah. Well, we've written a few times over the years together, and I
Yeah.
want to write with you again.
Sure,
So
sure.
there it is. It's on tape. We'll do it again.
It's on digital.
It's on digital. We'll do it again sometime. But
Cool.
again, thank you so much. This has been awesome. And,
Thank you.
And I'm excited for people to get to hear what you've had to share today. So,
Cool.
all right, good to see you.
You too.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mark as we talked about songwriting and publishing in the music industry. And I really hope you take the information that he's given and that you will apply it to your life and to your career as well. Remember, Edenbrook Productions is here to help if you need consulting services via phone call, Skype, or FaceTime. Be sure to let us know how we can help you begin to make a living in the music industry.